The U.S. Olympic Committee is taking on the Zika virus, hiring 2 infectious disease specialists to advise athletes ahead of the Summer Games. The mosquito-borne virus has sparked fear among the Olympians headed to Rio, a breeding ground for Zika. In the United States, there are now at least 68 reported cases in 19 different states. And in Washington, D.C., there are 2 women in the U.S. who contracted the virus while traveling out of the country. They've miscarried after returning home. Matthew Futterman, senior sports writer for the Wall Street Journal, is with me to talk about this. Matt, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, earlier this week, Alex Morgan called the virus a scary thing. Goalie for the U.S. team, Hope Solo, says she's thinking about skipping the Olympics. How will this impact the Games?
I think it's going to be on people's minds a lot during the next 6 months until people get control of this disease, figure out exactly what it is, exactly how dangerous it is. I mean, it has this really sort of scary name, right. Zika, which doesn't help matters. And especially in the case of the U.S. team, which has a lot of women. There were more women on the U.S. Olympic team than there were men 4 years ago, and especially on the U.S. soccer team, where you have women who are in their 30s. In relationships, some not in relationships, all of them may be thinking about having children at some point, some very soon after the Games. This is on their minds.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about this at the break. You were saying how the U.S. women's soccer team is in a very unique position because they play the World Cup, and then they've got the Olympics, and there's that time period where they have, in between those huge games, where they can maybe start families.
Yeah, this is a luxury that male athletes have, that they don't have to worry about these things. Women who have had very successful professional careers, this is sort of the prime earning time in their lives. They had to squeeze in a baby at some time,
right.
Or some of them feel like they have to, given that they're in their 30s. They can't have children forever. So it makes sense that they would be thinking, as soon as these Olympics are over, I've got 3 years until the World Cup starts. Maybe this is a good window for me to have a baby. And if you're going to have a baby, you want to have it as quickly as possible so then you can get back to training and get yourself in shape for World Cup qualifying, which will happen 2 years down the line.
So how else can the Olympic Committee go about easing people's concerns, easing the athletes' concerns? What can they do?
Well, the U.S. Olympic Committee has said they're going to hire 2 infectious diseases specialists who are going to be, on call, available to the athletes, make sure to answer any questions they have, anything they want to know, studying this thing, connecting with the CDC and the World Health Organization. I think that's probably the most important thing. I think it's also would be helpful if, in a sensitive way, they can sort of lend some perspective to this and sort of tamp down the hysteria. I mean, we do live with some pretty serious infectious diseases in the U.S., whether it's West Nile virus, which is a mosquito-borne virus and has been pretty scary at some times during the summers, Lyme disease you were mentioning. There are things you can get here, but sometimes when it's in a foreign land, a place people are not familiar with, there's been talk about water pollution being a real problem in Brazil. It sort of plays into this narrative of Olympics chaos. Oh my God, what's going to happen there?
And you were there during the World Cup, as were, I'm sure, a lot of female reporters. Our own Elaine Keano, who has children already, but she was there. So far, I haven't heard that anybody who was there, either as an athlete or as a reporter or in any capacity, has contracted this.
Well, it was at a similar time of year. The World Cup was June, July. The Olympics are going to be in August, which is their winter.
Right.
And Rio is on the ocean. The parts of it where tourists are, where most of these Olympics are going to take place, are sort of near the water. It's very breezy there. There aren't a ton of mosquitoes in those areas. I think as you go inland in some of the poorer neighborhoods and the favelas, you have a lot of standing water, and it can be a real problem. You have sewage issues. So you have that advantage that it is during the time of year when the mosquito influx is going to be a little less.
Might they consider perhaps moving some of the venues where those games will be played closer to those areas that you're talking about?
I think one thing that they are going to have to start thinking about is there are some soccer games scheduled for Manaus, which is in the Amazon, which is a beautiful place and a great area. The U.S. men played a game there last June. At night, it was in the low 90 degrees, I would say, humid as all get out. And that would be a place where you'd be concerned potentially about mosquitoes. If it's gonna lower people's concerns to not have soccer games there, that might be something they should think about.
All right. Matthew Futterman, senior sports writer for the Wall Street Journal. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.